Dilip Kumar, Part 11. My happiness was, however, short lived. Ayub Sahab soon took ill seriously with a lung ailment. The best doctors were unable to prolong his life with the medicines I managed to get from abroad. He knew he was not going to be with us for long, so he often requested me to take him to Marine Drive, where we could sit and watch the sun go down inch by inch into the sea. He used to tell me that he never ceased to wonder how the sun took away all the brilliance it spread in the sky when it went down, making way for the night to fall. One day, I came home earlier than usual and noticed that Ayub Sahab was looking pale and was having difficulty in taking even small breaths. I sent Chacha Umar to bring Agaji from the market and also fetch a doctor. I took my brother in my arms and he was calm and smiling at me as I looked him in the eye, fearing the worst. Chacha Umar brought Agaji and hurried off to fetch the doctor. Agaji sat close to Ayub Sahab and I could see his hand tremble while he took his son's hand in his. Ayub Sahab was smiling, and though he was struggling to breathe, there was an unusual radiance and calm on his handsome face. Before we knew it, like the radiant evening sun he loved to watch, he went in a few moments, even before the doctor could arrive, taking away all the brilliance with him. My contract with Bombay Talkies was coming to an end, and there were changes taking place in the studio management. Ashok Bhaiya had moved out, and so had S. Mukherjee Sahab to form Filmistan. As we were no longer fettered by foreign rule, there was a surge of creative activity and spirited unraveling of the communicative powers of the medium. Movies were being made with a sense of introspection, patriotism, and social purpose by many talented and dedicated filmmakers. V. Shantaram had already made Duniya Na Mane, released in 1937, Admi, released in 1939, Padosi, released in 1941, Shakuntala in 1943, and Dr. Kotnis Ki Amar Kahani in 1946, which were well received and appreciated for the focus on social issues. Baburao Painter had made Ram Joshi in 1947. Sohrab Modi was making films with historical stories, and his Minerva Moviton was in the news already as the film Shikandar, released in 1941 with Prithviraj Kapoor in the title role, had stirred a controversy, and Pukar in 1939 had become a huge hit. Mehboob Khan had made national studios famous with his association. There was no dearth of job opportunities for me and others who had been nurtured by Bombay talkies. The stamp of quality and prestige that was inherent in the name Bombay Talkies made it easy for most employees of the studio to find worthy openings in productions going on the floors in other studios. I did not hesitate to accept S. Mukherjee Saab's invitation to work in the pictures to be made at Filmistan. The beneficial aspect was that he did not talk about a contract or agreement restricting me to work only in his pictures. As it was, the studio employment system was inevitably being replaced by managements seeking services of actors and technicians on a freelance basis with varying remunerations commensurate with experience, expertise, and track record. My preference for Filmistan, however, was not driven by the monetary increment it offered. The pay packet I was receiving every month at Bombay Talkies was sufficient to take care of some of the more critical expenses that Amma had to manage every month in the house with its growing population of visiting family members from Peshawar and all 12 of her children, besides Chacha Umar and two of Agaji's sisters, and a never ending stream of visitors. A substantial increase in the earnings was no doubt welcome, but I was firm in my resolve that my choice of work and my career moves would not be determined or dictated by monetary gains and the trappings of transient success. It was a hard decision to take for a young man on the threshold of a successful career. I consider it a blessing that I was able to harness the equilibrium acquired from years of upright breeding to remain level headed and not be swept away by the illusionary glory and grandeur that surround an actor when he acquires the label of a star. There were many producers who had noticed me then and had called me over to talk about the films they were proposing to make with me in the male lead. S. Mukherjee Saab was aware of this development and he respected my decision to work in his venture at Filmistan. The film was Shahid, released in 1948. The subject fired my imagination, and I felt it was a wise decision to make a patriotic film at that juncture when we had all gone through the experience of witnessing the struggle for freedom from British rule and the sacrifices made by freedom fighters who belonged to different religions, castes, age groups, and social strata. I was completely in sync with the character in Shahid because of the social and political climate prevailing at that time, and my own patriotic sentiments were seeking an outlet which was there for the asking in the well written scenes and dialogues. Though the film was directed by Ramesh Saigal, it was the inspiration we got from S. Mukherjee Sahab that fleshed out the performance and added momentum to the movement of the narrative. I had an understanding and facile co-actor in Kamini Kaushal who was very attentive to the demands of the director and had the intelligence to grasp the intrinsic sensitivity of some of the more poignant situations in the script. She was an artist who could perform with the required authority when needed. She was not new to the profession, having acted in Chetan Anand's Neech Nagar, released in 1946 earlier. Moreover, she was an educated person with whom one could have an interesting conversation. She had a noticeable fluency in speaking English, which was unusual those days for an actress, and that delighted S. Mukherjee Saab, who generally preferred to talk in that language. In fact, after a day's intense work on scenes that called for serious emoting, we formed a small circle for some nice, light-hearted conversation in which occasionally Ashok Bhaiya also joined. Ramesh Saigal was a good conversationalist and he was the first one to address Kamini Kaushal by her real name Uma Kashyap, and all of us followed suit. Shahid met with deserving success at the box office. My pairing with Kamini Kaushal in that film got an encore from the audiences, and Filmistan had us teaming up in Nadia Ke Paar, released later in 1948, and Shabnam in 1949, which became even bigger successes. As far back as the 1940s, the gimmick of pleasing the mass audience by bringing together artists who were believed to share an attraction for each other in the life they lived outside their work environment was as common as it was today. The difference was that we conducted ourselves with dignity and we did not make headlines in newspapers and magazines or let our private lives become the target of public debate and derision. There were snoopy journalists even then, although television was yet to make its appearance. If we were emotionally involved, there was no public exhibition of it, and the decorum at work was consciously maintained. I was in my 20s when I acted in Shahid, Nadia Ke Paar, and Shabnam. I was no superhuman being. Cinema then did not attract educated ladies, and being in cinema was not a distinction for a girl or a woman. Coming as I did from a family that had a literary bent of mind and having grown up in a house that had such distinguished visitors as Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, a scholar and close associate of Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, Sadat Hassan Manto, an acclaimed writer, and Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, another noted writer, who talked freely with Akaji and at times with me and Ayub Sahab. I preferred the company of colleagues who were educated and well informed. Stardom bothered me more than it pleased me, and I guess I was drawn more intellectually than emotionally to Kamini Kaushal, with whom I could talk about matters and topics that interested me outside the purview of our working relationship. Yes, circumstances called for us to discontinue working together, and it was just as well because after a few films together, star pairings generally tend to pall on viewers, which is bad for business. To continue with my story, it became imperative now for us to shift our residence to a suburb that was closer to Goregaon in western Bombay, where many film studios were situated. Agaji now visited the fruit market only once a week since my income was quite adequate to support the family. He would not stop going to the market for two reasons. First, he would not hear of letting me be the sole breadwinner and wanted to contribute whatever he could get from the dwindling business to the running of the household. And secondly, he had friends whose warm greetings and conversations he missed when he stayed away from the bustle of the market for too long. With some earnest convincing, Agaji agreed to shift to Bandra. We took a bungalow at Pali Mala in the midst of a cluster of dwellings owned by Goan Christian settlers. Amma's asthmatic condition needed regular medical attention, and the physician treating her was accessible at a stone's throw from our new residence at Pali Mala. Amma never got over the passing of Ayub. She did not weep in front of Agaji or us, but I knew she spent many nights crying softly into her pillow. The grief was gnawing at her from within, and it began to tell on her health, which was declining steadily despite the best treatment we were providing for her at home now that we were in Bandra. She fought against the debilitating condition and put on a brave front before my younger sisters and brothers who needed her and turned to her for even the smallest requirements in their lives. It was only when I was alone with her that she spoke softly about the inevitability of death, and she would notice the pain on my face and swiftly change the subject. Agachi was aware of Amma's trust in me and the fact that she shared her thoughts and dreams with me in her own quiet way. One day, he emerged from their room and saw me getting ready to go out. He beckoned to me and told me to go and sit by Amma's bedside. Be with her, he said, and left the house to bring the doctor from his home across the road. From the corner of my eye, I could see him controlling his surging emotions. I hurried in, taking quick strides. Amma was relaxed, but the extreme pallor on her face indicated that she needed immediate medical attention. I took my seat at the bedside, raising her head to my chest as I always did. I held her soft hand and raised it to my lips in a silent gesture of love. I had a lump in my throat and tears were welling up in my eyes. The premonition was unmistakable, and at that point, all that I prayed for was the strength to give her the sense of assurance and security she was seeking from me. As always, she understood my feelings, and when Agaji returned with the doctor, she was composed and bravely trying to look well. Somehow, Agaji knew that we were going to lose her soon. He made arrangements to move her to our house in Deolali so that she could feel better in the unpolluted environment of the hill station. At Deolali, he looked gaunt and bleary eyed, and he seldom went out of the house. Though he was not expressing it in words, it was obvious that his inner voice was disturbing him with anxious thoughts and the dread of losing the quiet companion from whom he had derived solace and strength for years. In a few days, on 27th August 1948, she was gone from our midst, passing peacefully from the turmoil of life to eternal tranquility. I did not let my pain show, concealing it from Agaji and my siblings the way I did when Ayub Saab had passed away. All those who knew her and Agaji came to offer condolences when we returned to Bombay. The real mourners were the poor who lived in the neighborhood. She never let anyone who came to our door go away empty handed. A regular visitor was our Dhobi's wife, who came with her young son Pyarelal and left the house with goodies packed for him. Pyarelal learned the art of laundering from his parents and became my personal launderer after his parents died. He is now in his 70s and he is serving in our house as the master dhobi, taking care of my white trousers and shirts. To this day, Pyarelal remembers the halwas and other goodies Amma used to pack for him to take home and share with his younger brothers. All this was in addition to the sumptuous meals she would serve to him and his mother in the kitchen. It took me all my strength and willpower to suppress the pain and deep sense of loss I felt and stand up manfully before my brothers and sisters and give them the implicit understanding of being both mother and father to them, since Agaji spoke very little and kept more and more to himself now. One day, when we were alone, he expressed a wish. He said it was his wish to be laid to rest at Deolali, close to where Amma rested. I bought a Fiat car sometimes in the late 1940s, not so much because I needed it, but more because my sisters required a vehicle to go out. My first drive was to Parborn Stadium. A cricket match was going on and it must have been the second day. I no longer stood in a queue to get an admission ticket to watch a match as I was now somewhat recognized in public. I had got to know the ace cricketer Vijay Merchant, who had been introduced to me by Dr. Masani, who was himself a great cricket enthusiast. I asked my driver to take me to Churchgate, from where I picked up Dr. Masani and we reached the stadium in time to be ushered to the enclosure meant for special invitees, which I used to eye longingly wherever I took my seat in the stands at a lofty height from where one could see the players by craning one's neck and inviting a crick if one was not prudent. I found myself seated beside an impressive looking man wearing an unbuttoned jacket over his shirt. He was talking to a lean man seated on his right, tilting his broad frame to hear what the lean man was trying to tell him on seeing me. I took my seat, and since both of them smiled at me, I thought it fit to greet them, and they returned my greeting warmly. After the match started and progressed, the impressive looking man felt he should speak to me. He introduced himself as Mehboob Khan and introduced his friend as Naushad Mia. It was the beginning of two enduring friendships and professional relationships in my life and career. Naushad Mia, basically a music composer, had written the story of what became the film Mela, and he invited me to meet him and his director S.U. Sunny the following week. Both Naushad Mia and Mehboob Khan had seen Shahid. My meeting with Naushad Mia took place in Sun's small office where he narrated to me briefly the story of Mela. He also told me that they had recorded the title song with which they would like to start the shooting. It was a bit awkward for me to ask questions about the details of the story, but I thought it would be a risk if I did not know enough to be in a position to accept the film. I must mention here that my work choices from the very beginning were not governed by the remuneration I was offered. This was something I learned from Nitin Bose and Devika Rani, who were my first and most influential teachers. While working with Nitin Bose during the making of Milan, released in 1946, I understood how vital it is for an actor to get so close to the character that the thin line between the actor's own personality and the imagined personality of the character gets ruthlessly rubbed off for the time when you are involved in the shooting. To get that close to the character, it is very important to know everything about the character and his mind and emotions. While I was deeply involved with Milan, one day Nitinda asked me whether I had seriously read the novel Nauka Dubi, written in Bengali by the Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore. I told him that I had read the translation given to me and, of course, the script, which was very detailed. We were preparing to shoot the scene in which the character named Ramesh has travelled all night by train and has reached Varanasi, where he has to immerse the mortal remains of his mother in the Ganga. He performs his duty with a heavy heart, tired and weather beaten as he bound to be after the overnight journey. Nitinda asked me if I had given sufficient thought to the state of Ramesh's mind and his feelings during the journey by train, sitting up all night holding the urn securely so that the last remains from it did not spill out. Nitinda also asked me to think over the scene, imagining the disturbed state of Ramesh's mind as he sat looking at the urn and remembering his mother, who used to talk to him affectionately and serve him food and wake him up in the mornings with a cup of hot tea. He finally asked me, "Don't you think Ramesh would have thought to himself, 'This is my mother who has been reduced to ashes, my mother who had such a soft hands and such gentle eyes?'" I told Nitin frankly that I had not thought so deeply because such depth was not in the script. Nitinda, of course, understood, but he gave me a valuable lesson that has stood me in good stead. He made me write 4 to 5 pages expressing my feelings as Ramesh during the journey. I sat up half the night and wrote and rewrote until I was overcome by sleep. The next day, the scene was to be shot at a location in Kodbandar in Bombay. When the camera started to roll, I was into the scene emotionally, and the experience was satisfying for me and Nitinda. That was how Nitinda groomed me. He explained that a good script always helped an actor to perform effectively, but there were areas beyond what was given to him in the script that were waiting to be explored by one who wished to rise above the given areas in his performance. When Rabindranath Tagore wrote Nauka Dubi, he would never have thought that the fine literary work would become the base of a feature film. So it was entirely up to the scriptwriter to take the work to another level as a visual experience with the characters coming alive and living through all the experiences narrated in the book. There is no stopping you if you, as an actor, felt emboldened to discover niches in the character's emotional makeup that you would like to bring to the foray, even if they are not there in the script, he advised me. He agreed that it was not easy for an actor to rise above the script, but it was not impossible either if the collaboration among the writer, actor, and director worked well. What Devika Rani had told me was also a lesson I have borne in mind and applied to my work, sometimes to the surprise of my directors. She had pointed out that a director may be satisfied with the shot an actor had given, but it is for the actor to discern for himself whether he had really given his best. The actor, she told me, was within his rights to request for another take if he felt he could do better. I have not only borne all this in mind where my work is concerned, but also respected my co actors' wishes if they wanted another take when it seemed fine for the director to call the shot. Devika Rani had advised me and all the actors she employed at Bombay Talkies that it was important to rehearse till a level of competence to perform was achieved. In the early years, it was a necessity for me to rehearse, but even in the later years, her advice stayed with me when I had to match a benchmark I had mentally set for myself. In fact, I am aware that I am known for the number of rehearsals I do for even what seems to be a simple scene. Let me give an example. There was a situation in Nitin Bose's Deedar, released in 1951, in which Ashok Bhaiya and I had lines to deliver, and the cue for his lines had to be taken from my lines. In our rehearsals, we had mutually decided that the word mulayam, meaning soft, in my dialogue would be his cue to speak and turn his face towards me. Being a Bombay talkies man, Ashok Bhaiya had as much of a fetish for rehearsals as I had, and so we had already had almost 8 to 10 rehearsals. The director told us to be ready for the take and he called for action. When I spoke my dialogue, quite inadvertently, I replaced the word mulayam with narm, also meaning soft, and Ashok Bhaiya was thrown off track. I don't know what went wrong with me that day. The director called cut, and I need not tell you what followed. Though not one to lose his temper, Ashok Bhaiya gave me a piece of his mind and said gruffly, "Okay, now we will stick to Narm." Thank you very much.